lazy exercise comments or talk. As you can see, I left the comments on this video that I was watching about when a client constantly cheats on their meal plan, and then don't see results. As a coach, you're supposed to take that into account, that your client might cheat, your client might not follow the plan, which is why you never try to give them the perfect plan. That's why you never try to give them leeway where it's like, yeah, instead of giving you a 1,000 calorie diet, putting in a 1,000 calorie deficit, I will instead put you on an 1,800 calorie diet, so you're only in a 200 calorie deficit. See, you're doing that because you're trying to be nice, right? You're trying to give them some wiggle room, some grace. But the reason why they're big is because they don't control how much calories they consume. They overeat calories. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't eat a lot of food. They just eat a lot of calories. They eat a small amount of food, and because they already have this mindset and this habit of eating very little meals, like 1 or 2 meals a day, but these meals are like 2,000 plus calories per meal, is why they're big. They don't eat a lot. You gotta take that into account. You gotta pay attention that not everyone eats the same way. You know, a lot of the food that most people are eating, they don't know how much calories in it. Sometimes they do eat a lot. They eat more than they should. You know, 1 cup of cereal is low calorie, but 2-3 cups is not low calorie. That's why it's important to understand that. To understand that no one's perfect, so giving somebody the perfect, training routine and meal plan is ignorant. Just because you can stick to a 1,800 calorie diet or whatever workout routine that you do, doesn't mean everybody else can. You're supposed to evaluate the person you're training and look at their habits. If they like to ride bicycles, you do not suggest them to get on a treadmill or a Stairmaster for cardio. Use the fact that they like to ride bikes for them to do cardio on a bike. Common sense, right? If they like to swim, then swimming should be their cardio. If they like dancing, then dancing is their cardio. All you have to do is tell them, hey, dance for an hour, 60 minutes of dancing. You'll burn calories. Yeah. 60 minutes of swimming, you'll burn calories. Right? And we have stuff like fitness trackers, right, that can track other activities besides walking. It's just that we use walking as the most basic cardio you can do, because we all walk, we all use our legs on a day-to-day basis, so it makes sense to, use that our baseline cardio. But some people go crazy and be like, oh, you gotta do this and that, and you gotta. So the problem that always happens is that people overcomplicate fitness. I make it simpler because I point out the fact is, like, you don't have to do hours and hours of cardio. Now, if you do, yeah, you're gonna get results. You're gonna get them pretty fast. But you can do less and still get results. So there is no all or nothing. No, there is less. You can do less cardio and get results. You can lift weights less and get results. Just like you can work less at a job and still make money and still pay bills, right? So it's like you don't always have to go all in on something. And this is part of why a lot of people fail in their fitness journey, because they instead of starting at a simple low level, walking as cardio, going to gym, doing full body once a week, instead of starting off at the basic, at that low level, and work your way up to the more advanced, more hour, more weekly, more bro splits and all this other stuff, they automatically start with the hardest stuff first and then they quit. And that's the sad part, is the fact that they do the hard stuff, which is what causes them to quit. This is why I call my fitness business Lazy Exercises Fitness, because it's starting from the basics, from something as simple as walking, lowering the amount of calories that you eat, not necessarily changing your whole diet. That's the thing. Most people who get into fitness journey, they're new, right? They don't know everything. They can't trust everything, because there's gonna be a whole bunch of people, arguing and trying to convince you to listen to them and ignore somebody else. So there's going to be a lot of fighting. This is why it's important to make things simple. A simple diet where you just find something that you like that's already low calorie and eat more of that. If you like yogurt, right, for example, right, eat more yogurt. You like eggs, eat more eggs. These things are already low calorie. Just eat more of it. That's one of the things I started doing at first, was to eat more of what I already like to eat. But then over time I eventually changed it because I wanted to get more carbs, more protein, more, right? So the macro stuff, the more advanced stuff. Once you learn more and you become more experienced, especially when you start lifting heavier weights, you start considering changing your diet up a bit, right? Changing up what you eat and start liking new things. But sometimes you get tired of eating the same thing over and over again. There was a time I was eating tuna. I like tuna, but not that much that I want to eat it every week. So eggs, I can eat it because there's different ways I can eat the eggs. There's only like one way I can really eat tuna, and I don't want to eat tuna the same exact way over and over again. But eggs, I can eat in so many different ways that it's very versatile. Which is why I always advise people to eat eggs as the first part of their diet. Is like, start eating more eggs and start eating less McDonald's, right? Start drinking more water, less soda, less coffee, right? Drink, if you really want a soda, drink diet soda at least, not regular soda, right? And so forth and so forth. So like I make small suggestions that have a big impact, because because you got to get people used to these small changes before you tell them to do the big changes. The problem is everybody just straight for the big changes, like, oh, you got to start doing this, push-pull day split, and you got to consume 300 grams of protein and all this crazy shit that most people can't handle. It's already difficult for people who've been going to the gym for a couple of years to do this stuff. You're going to tell somebody who just started going to the gym last week to do all this stuff? That's ridiculous. So you got to be reasonable, logical, have a little bit of common sense, that you got to make things easy. And the fact that I see a lot of times people try to make it seem like, nah, man, you can't get a physique without hard work, blah blah blah. It's like, that's incorrect. You can improve your physique without hard work. It's better to work smarter, not harder. And this is where science-based thing comes in, is trying to come up with ways to work smarter instead of working harder. Because harder is the unscientific, proven method of doing things. Right? Because you work harder to compensate for your lack of knowledge, for your lack of knowing something. Like working, instead of just working a regular 40-hour shift every week, you try to work 50 hours so you can make more money. Right? But a smart person, right, a work smarter person, would try to make more money with that 40 hours instead of working an extra 10 hours. They'll make the 40 hours count. They'll try to make the most of it. That way they could turn their 40-hour work week into 80 hours worth of income, right, worth of money. So that's the work smarter, not harder. So it's like, that's why I say less is more. Because if you give somebody a easier way of losing weight, an easier way of building muscle, they will do that a lot longer than if you gave them a harder way of losing fat and a harder way of losing muscle. This is why you have scenarios like these competition stuff, these shows where it's like, oh, the biggest loser, they're going to lose 100 pounds in 1 month. And the reason why people gain all the weight back after those competitions is because they're not doing the same thing that they did in those while they're in the competition. And nobody wants to. No one wants to, run 3 miles a day, eat, 300 calories a day. Like, no one wants to go to that extreme length just to get, an outcome. If that was the case, then everybody would be doing it and we'd all be skinny and there will be no obesity. But obviously, no one wants to do things the hard way. They want the easy way. So that's why the best thing to do is give somebody the easy way to do things. And if they do it, great, they will get results. But if they don't do it the easy way, they try to do it the hard way, well, they'll get more results. So you win regardless. But it's all about being smart. You have to learn, you have to understand that you have to manipulate people into making the best decisions. You know they're not going to stick to the diet, so don't give them a diet where they could fail. Because I see that as you being a shitty coach if you allow them to fail. If they cheat on the diet, they get no results. I blame you for that. Because I don't see it as the student is bad. I see it as the teacher is bad. There's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher. Because the teacher should know better. Should know that this student that you're helping, this client is not going to stick to the diet perfectly. So you give them a diet that will be a little bit too much to even try to do, right? Give them more volume, give them less calories, and then you'll see them be like, all right, I'm going to eat more calories, I'm going to do less exercise. So they're going to do the opposite of what you tell them. Which ironically, the whole point of this is that that's what you want. You want them to cheat. You want them to, quote unquote, fail, and in reality succeed.